Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So there is something of a sentiment that we're going to be looking at today, and that is basically the reveal of Gotham Knights, if it was more than likely done too early, and if that's something that the development firms need to be taking responsibility for in the future. Now, this was something that was shared as some sort of a sentiment from one of our audience members here. And you guys know one of my favorite formats is actually engaging in discussions that a lot of you here bring. So one of our audience members, Aizen, I think that's how you say the name, they said, I think the problem here nowadays is transparency. These companies like to quickly show you their game, but then it's nowhere near done. This needs to stop because it's very disappointing and stupid at the same time. And this is something that, a lot of people have said. If the game is not necessarily ready, there seems to be no point in trying to reveal the game if you don't have some sort of a timeline, or at least what I would say maybe the manpower, or at least, a realistic projection on as to when the game is going to, be ready. Now, there's something really interesting, because if you kind of boil it down, right? If you kind of say to yourself, well, what is going on? Other than say the fact that the Gotham Knights game got double delays, you also have to look at the contingent, situations as well. You got to bring context into it. The lockdowns hit Canada much harder than it did the United States. This is just a fact because of the way the United States is different in terms of governance. It was kind of very interesting to see how different states took down their own lockdown measures and implemented them, whereas in Canada, it's a whole different thing. So Warner Brothers Games Montreal, being in that geographical region, seemed to have been affected a lot by it. I made a video the other day talking about one of the developers actually mentioning something about the new lockdown measures that had been announced in Quebec. And so, well, not necessarily lockdown, but new, I would say, measures that were put in place. I'm not going to say lockdown measures. So I think these things have a role to play nonetheless. Now, think about a studio like Insomniac Games. They actually are in California. They're basically based in Burbank, California, and they do their work here in the United States, stateside. So even around that time, they were still able to finish up their work in Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, who knows how far they already are in the production of their Spider-Man 2 game, probably giving them a little bit more confidence to be able to announce that game and say, oh, this is actually a 2023 title. So this is another thing that you also have to kind of put into place and take into consideration when we look at this. I'm not saying that the studios do not need to be responsible. This is not what I'm saying. I am saying at least that in the case of the Gotham Knights game, that it may have been something of that nature. Now, here's where I say we can hold the developers responsible, or let's not say the developers. Let's say the PR people and the people who have the, I would say, the autonomy to be able to make statements on behalf of the studio. I would say that their own problem is that they've kept their community in the dark for the longest time. This is a heavy criticism that we've actually given a lot of times here in the community and different, conversations that we've had, because that's very important. The silence doesn't necessarily bode well for them. I think it's a matter of care if they're able to make mention of specific circumstances that could be, in a sense, withholding them from making their deadlines. Now, here's another thing too. A lot of corporations don't do that naturally. They don't necessarily come out to mention a lot of the, strict situations that may be affecting them, especially if they are actually done by governments that are, pretty much in charge of the areas and geographical locations where they are. And it also depends on the country. You know what I mean? Say in the United States, things are actually different in the way that people can address situations. So I think there's probably some sort of a culture that's actually being taken into account in terms of the Canadian way that we're probably not necessarily seeing, depending on where we are in this, in the world in terms of geographical, setting. So this is what I think, in my own opinion anyways. But nonetheless, I feel like there will still have been a way, even if there are any restrictions or anything that they wanted to make sure that they take into consideration in their PR, they could have made sure that it was communicated in a very effective way that put the fans more than anything else into the entire equation. But so far, this has not been the case. And I'm just here, racking my brain and thinking, could it be that, things are much more dire than we actually think? Or is it that, things are probably coming up well, but they're just silent because of the uncertainties, and they don't want to go ahead and make any more promises in their announcements, or maybe they don't want to establish a communication channel just yet, which is kind of also still, in a sense, a waste and a shame anyways. I feel like they could have, but again, if they don't have a product to offer, I mean, God forbid this game gets one more year of delay. That would really be sad. But, it's just January. We're not going to go ahead and write the game off just yet. We're going to kind of stick with what it is that we know, and probably just, keep an open eye. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Let me hear, pretty much tell me what it is that you think about the Gotham Knights handling in terms of the PR, in terms of how you think the COVID, restrictions and, different governance mandates or whatever would have affected the game. And just let's just hash it out in the comment section and just continue to talk. Thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Peace out.